Hello and welcome to the next lecture. So in previous lecture we've seen the Hibernate ORM. Today we're going to convert our app that we've done in the previous lecture for the books into the Panache using the Panache extension. So the Panache is basically an extension or additional structure that will help you to convert your empty entity object into something that you can use with additional methods. And it's done really easy. So the first thing, of course, we need to add an extension, the library itself. So this is done. Of course, you can use the Maven NV Maven Quarkus set extension, or you can just duplicate the Hibernate ORM and then put the Panache at the end. That's it. So you have now the Panache itself. So now we can convert our book into Panache entity. So first you need to extend the Panache entity. Not sure if it's not exporting, but like this, and that's actually it. So they also suggest to put everything as public like this. So let's also remove the getters and setters. So it's just suggested to use it this way with Panache if it's needed. So you also need to remove an ID because it's default for Panache. Yeah, so let's make it like this. So everything we need is this basic structure, right? So we have a public fields and then the book. So you can create a getter for public the name, getter for the name, and you can put here to lowercase, for example. So you always want to have a lowercase. So now you can restart. You can start our. Of course, it won't run actually because probably no, it won't. It will actually. So let's start our Quarkus dev. Okay, and let's query our book, and you can see it's working as it was working before, right? So you can see that we have a get book and then the ID, author, name, pages, everything on place, and you can see that the ID, even though we removed it from the book, you can see that in Panache entity they have an ID for itself right there. So let's also try to use a post and put our other book that we had here. Okay, so now we can call a get, and you can see that we have 3 books right now. I accidentally pressed it 2 times. So now you can see that we have the Freelancer's Bible and then 2 Not Me books. So yeah, so nothing really changed at all, but what you can do, of course, in our case, is to go to book resource and remove the entity manager whatsoever, because you don't need it anymore. And so now we can adapt our book resource to something more convenient. So for example, we can create a public list of book, right? Yeah, so let's import it, find all books, right, like this. So now we can just call the find all from the Panache entity, right, and then list like this, and of course return. So we return find all list, right? And now we can get the instead of manager create query, we can just call super easy. You can call a book. What was that? Find all books. Like find. Is it public? Yes. Find all books like that. Yeah. So why it's not? Oh yeah. So we need to make it static. Sorry. So yeah, it should be a static method. Now we can use this instead of what we had previously, right? So yeah, let's comment it out for now for post and update. We'll go back to it in a second. And so let's go to the get, and you will see that we queried again the Freelancer's Bible, even though we haven't used the entity manager. So we can use this wrappers for Panache, find all, for example. So now going back to the persistency, we can go to the book resource, and where we call the save book, we can call a book persist right now, like this. Instead of, as we previously used manager persist, we'll have a persist method on the book. So for example, in Laravel, you have the same thing, but it's called save. So you call it book, or the other way, save. So this is basically the same thing. So you have all the methods handy near the entity object. So now, instead of using the manager, we just call a method on the book itself. So we can try it out as well. Let's call it post. Let's add another book. And yeah, so now we have the book saved. You can see that we have already ID2 injected back. So we can also implement a delete method if you want. So you can call path ID like this, delete, right? Produces media type application JSON, transactional as well, public book, delete book, and let's copy over the integer IDs here. So what we can call is book. We can also use this this find method outside, or you can just create a static method inside of the user object and use it as well. So we'll use the delete. And here you can put a query on the left, and then on the right you can put the parameters. ID equals like this, and then the object is ID. So, and I think you can also, do I have it, or delete? No, it won't return a long. Okay, so we can firstly yeah, let's return boolean, whatever. So let's return true. So in this case, if we call it delete method on book 1, we should theoretically call the, okay, so we also need to change the integer to long in our case, because the ID is long by default. So now if we call the book delete ID, in this case without the equals like this, so this should work ideally. Let's see. So yeah, you can see that we have a true, and then we go to the get like this, and you can see that the list is empty basically, right? So you can also call so many different types of books. So I'll just show it there, but we won't edit it somewhere. So we can also call the find by ID. This is the most probably useful command here. So you can find the object by ID. So you can also count book count like this. So you can count the amount of books, just if you need to have a number. And you can also query count the amount of the output of a query, right? Like, so if you want to output a optional value, right, you can also call a book find by ID optional. So the idea is the same. So then you can call or else, for example, and you can supply other Panache entity base or book like this. So you can get it like this, or you can call a book here. This will work as well. So again, you can get a list straight away. So instead of find all, right, as we're using here find and then list, you can just call a list like this. So you can call a book list, and then you or you can call a list all to get all the users, or you can get a list and then, for example, we have here author equals Sarah, author Sarah like this, right? And this will return us Sarah itself. And again, all the other options works the same way. So you can specify the field here, or query a raw query if you want, and after that the parameters here will be. So the other way, of course, is you can also delete all. So all the options have an all method, so you can sort, delete everything, and do whatever you want with it. So you can call book delete all, for example, right, and something like this. So you can also update the objects, or for example, you can put the update, and then you put a name equals, for example, where we can use the Bob, right, where the name equals, and then you put a question mark parameter with a number of the specific argument, and then you put here Sarah, for example, like this. So this will, of course, update the Sarah object with the Bob, and let's get actually a list of books. And yeah, so we need to, if you update something, we need to put a transactional as well in our case. And you can see that we have a name Bob here instead of Sarah when we execute this field, right? So let's remove the transactional. So there is one more thing that you can use called the stream API. So you can call stream all, for example, and then you can like filter objects by it, for example, what we have here, name, right? So you need to specify that you have a specific string here. This is a little bit awkward, but the idea of course is that you have a string of book like this. So now you can put a stream name, for example, equals Sarah, right? And collect, for example, collectors list, and this will work as well. So you can return only the Sarah if you need, right? So there is a lot of different options. So you can also use paging on Panache. For example, you can go to book, find author is Sarah, right, like this. So you get back a Panache query. So query, let's name it query, and then the type of the book. So you can call query page, and then page of size, and then 50, for example, right? And then when you query, you can get a list, right? And then next time, so this is a list of books, right? And then you can call query next page, for example, right? And then you can query the list again if you want to iterate with the first 50 users and then like query the next page, right? Or of course you can specify off and then the index. So for example, you can put a second index, right, and the size of the page. So there's endless possibilities that you can use with the paging. And you can also query the page count as well if you want to get the count of all the pages that you have. So sorting works the same way. You can get a book list, for example, right? Query and then or list all, and then you can specify a sort. So sort, for example, by what we have by name, right? For example, you can sort by name. And you can also add additional sorting fields, for example, name and author. So you first sort by name and then by author. And of course you get a list back if needed, right? So like this. So as I said, it's ideally you want to use all the methods that you like this, right? So if you find something or if you're trying to look for something, it will be better to put it into the static methods in a book like this. So if you want to add additional methods, it will be better to put them here. So for example, if you want to have a static list of book, find books by name, right, something like this. So you'll return a find name and then actually string, of course, here, name, right, and list, for example, right, or something like this. Or you want to, yeah, so this is like an option here. Or the other way that you can do it is you can create a repository. So you can put a repository inside of the data, for example, right, and then you can create a book repository like this. So you put the application scope here, and then you implement the Panache repository based on book like this. And then so firstly, of course, you have some methods here, like you can delete, is persistent, flush, and all this stuff. Persistent flush, for example, find by optional ID. So, and of course you can create your own. So for example, we can roll back all the methods here like this. Of course, we don't need to have them static anymore. So, and yeah, so something like this. So you can keep your entity object super simple without any overwhelming stuff, right? And here you can have all the required stuff. So now we can, of course, go back to the book resource and inject, instead of using the book itself, you can inject our book repository, right? Book repository, and then you just change the book repository, find all books, and what do I have here? Book persist will work, and the delete, delete, we can also put a book repository delete like this. So yeah, so let's see if it's working, of course. So let's comment it out as well, because we don't need it anymore, and let's call it get, and you can see that it's still working. We can delete the object if needed by 1, so we get deleted the object, and we have an empty list of. So you might have saw already that the ID is gone from the our book, right? And what if you have, for example, a string ID, right? You use a UUID, for example, or something like this, and you can use the ID itself for the like from the Panache entity, and it's super easy to fix. So you can add a base here like this, so we'll have a Panache entity base. And so you can see now that persistent entity should have primary key, of course, and you're just taking back your ID as it was. For example, if you use a string ID or something like this, or if how we had it previously, integer ID, and here, of course, generated value, strategy, identity, generation type identity, like this, strategy, like this, right? So, but then you need to, if you're using repository, you need to put here ID as well. So you can see that there is 2 different types of Panache repository. So you need to change it to base, and then you put the entity itself as a book, and the ID will be an integer in our case. Or if you use something else, then when we delete here that we had a long, we can of course put the integer back. Of course, it's better to use the long. For this example, I used integer, but yeah, of course you can change it. And so if you've seen already, as I said, you need to have a transaction to be in transaction in order to execute such methods as persist or delete or whatever we were using previously. So you can use transaction on any application scoped class, for example, the book resource or the book repository or whatever you use. If you have a service or something like this. So, and after you quit this method, the transaction will be saved. So this is like the one of the options that you can use for the transaction. And the last thing that you might be interested in is so that you won't update the object, the log, right? If you get the object, so you create an object, and then somehow, somewhere, someone decided to update it, and then you save it again, and you have inconsistency of the data. So this is done really easy. So one option is to find by ID, and you can see here already we put the ID 123, for example, and then a log mode type. So you can call a log mode type here, and you can see different options. So we can use a pessimistic write, for example. And the other one is if you use a find like this, then you could put a with log, and then again the log type. So this will log the specific row or amount of rows, and then you can update, and so you can be sure that nobody will write anything there before you. So like this is very, very, very convenient. So yeah, now you know how to use the Panache with the Hibernate ORM, and you know how to create a book repository and update the book to use the Panache. And if you need the ID, you can use a Panache entity base if needed. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.